Hello and welcome to the Tank Club Tank Guide for the Veteran Sanity's Edge trial. This is a basic guide for beginners to learn the base mechanics of this trial from the tank perspective. Sanity's Edge is a lot easier and is definitely more accessible for a larger portion of the player base compared to more recent trials such as Rockgrove and Dreadcell Reef. One of the hardest parts of the trial can be the ad pulls, and some of the bosses are quite simple with some higher damage. So let's get into the guide. So to start off, we've got ad pulls, and the flag ads are obviously very important in this trial. For this part, we've got an enforcer, and this will teleport once combat starts. So you want to kind of taunt that and move with it to wherever the location that it moves to. With the Wamasu, the off tank can take that. You want to stick everything together, but it is going to charge through the group. For the early ad phases, you're not dealing with too many different types of ads. You just kind of follow wherever the enforcer teleports to. It has an uninterruptible channel attack, so you do have to watch out for that. As you move on to the second ad pull, there's going to be a portal that spawns in the corner, and you're going to get a butcher this time. Now the butcher needs to be killed really quickly. It does some fire damage, it does dots, it ramps up damage if you stand inside of it, and it does a chain attack. You also get the Paranoxia, and these just need to be taunted and turned away from the group as quickly as you can. If you don't turn them away, they're going to cause a lot of damage. When the butcher throws down fire AoEs, you want to be moving out of those. As you can see, there is ramping damage the longer you kind of stand in them, and you will have a dot applied to your character as well. So it's best to just spin those around and then kind of try to kite out of the fire. As you move up the stairs, there could be another Paranoxia. These can spawn anywhere around the stair area, and so you just want to quickly grab those and spin them around. It's ideal if they're not mixed in with other ad pulls. So there's another ad pull just behind this here. So if you can grab it and kill this before you reach the other ad pull, that would be ideal. As you move on to the next ad pull, we've got another enforcer, and we've got two Wamasus here. For the off tank, they will take both of the Wamasus. The main tank could take them. You could just take everything, but just for the sake of making sure everything's taunted really quickly, you just split up the ads. There's some little ads that don't really do a lot. They can be chained in, and the Wamasus will do a charge attack, which is, if you block it, it doesn't do anything. You still get knocked back, so it will always knock people back. You just have to move out of it. It will always go on the path towards a person that it's targeted to. In a situation where you've got two of them, it can be quite chaotic, especially because they do a cone attack, so that needs to be pointed away from the group as well. The easiest thing is to just stack everything up, and if somebody's getting charged, step away a little bit so that they can see which direction it's going in and everybody can move out of it. Some more Wamasus again. We've got a butcher and an enforcer here. Again, you just stack the butcher on top of wherever the enforcer teleports to, so the enforcer will always do a teleport very, very early on in the ad pull, and then you just stack it up with everything else. Again, you've got the fire AoEs that are mostly on the tank who has got taunt, and there's a lot of kind of damage in the vicinity, so it's good to kind of pull those into a safe area for your group to kill them. There will be a variety of mini bosses that spawn, and these will always spawn. You'll always get two per trial. They don't have a set spawn location. They appear kind of out of a portal. So far I've seen them spawn in 4 different places, but it's typically in an archway or a doorway when it happens. The main mechanics of this, Spiral Descender, so you just want to turn it away from your group because it does a cone attack. That's really, really vital that that's not hitting the group. You've also got the attack where it heavy attacks you, and you just block that. It will take your health and you will have to be healed up to full. The AoEs that drop on the ground, you can just kind of step back out of them. And then the main mechanic is when it pulls you in and fills up the room with a big AoE, you can just kind of stand in there and block that. But do be careful, because if you're not on full health, that could kill you. It will kill damage dealers if they're not blocking, but you do kind of get pulled in. It's easier just to stay in it and block as a tank rather than move out of it. Then you've got the final ad pull before the first boss. Again, stack the butcher on top of the archer. The off tank should get the Wamasu, bring it on top of the stack as well, and your group can just burn everything down. If you wanted to play it really safe, you could pull the Wamasu away from group, so then it makes it easier and your group have got more time to avoid the charge. Obviously, when you stack it in, it's going to charge straight at the group and it's going to happen very quickly, whereas if it's at the other side of the room, it's going to have to run the full length of the room, giving people the chance to potentially move out of the charge. But that is just if you wanted to play it extra safe, that would be possible at the early stage of this trial. Later on in the trial though, there are ad pulls with Wamasus and other really significant ads, so it's not really possible then to stack them away from the group because there's too many things to be dealing with, so they do have to stay in the group at some stages of the trial. Then we're on to boss number 1. And in my opinion, probably the hardest boss of the 3. This is the one with the main mechanics. So as you go into this fight, you want to hold the boss around the bottom of the stairs area, and every time you get hit by an attack, it applies hemorrhage. And hemorrhage is a damage over time effect, which can be quite problematic. When the firebomb happens, you want to move out of this. If you get hit by it, you get a little circle around your feet, and that signifies that you've got the flame dot attached to your character, so you just want to step out of those. You just keep moving the boss from kind of side to side to get away from it. Some of the main attacks here, so you've got the spin attack. That is easier just to block that one rather than try to get out of it. That will give you a stack of hemorrhage, and it is a 4k damage tick every time you get hit by it, but it's easier just to block that one. When you get hit by a heavy attack, this will apply a healing absorption, and you need to be healed back to full health to get rid of it. And it's one of the same mechanics like Dreadsail Reef, where you need to be healed up to full. If you don't block the attack, it'll cause a different effect. If you dodge roll, it will enrage the boss, and that can be quite problematic. With the cone AoE that appears in front of the boss, you should attempt to walk out of that one. If you're closer to the boss, it's much easier to get out of because it's a lot smaller at the point nearer to the boss. The chain mechanic here, where you get chained, you need to break free. If you don't break free, you'll get pulled in, and this will happen in 180 degrees at the front of the boss. After that is usually a spin attack, so people that get pulled in can be really hurt. When you've got overlapping mechanics like that one, where you've got the flame AoE coming and the cone, it is easier just to try and time your dodge roll to avoid both mechanics at the same time. You don't really want to push the boss, so if your group is a really top group, you could stack the Wamasu close to the boss so that you can kill both at the same time. But if you burn the boss too hard, you will get multiple Wamasus, which makes it very difficult. So it is easier just to pull it a little bit away and focus the Wamasu, and then kill the boss once the Wamasu is dead. The off tank always takes the Wamasu and can pull that to the side just so your group can focus it. It will be charging through the group. Sometimes it can turn around and do the lightning breath everywhere, and it's really integral to kind of get that killed. You want to try and keep the boss positioned so it's not facing the group. It can be quite difficult when there's a lot of fire, but you want to move it very quickly and point it away from the group. Throughout the fight, you will get archers that spawn in, and there's a phase as well where you get like a portal phase, and the archers will become invulnerable so you can't attack them. During those phases, the archers need to be interrupted. If they don't get interrupted, they will kill members of your group, including the tank. So even if you're blocking the attack, the archers have to be interrupted. Even if a tank's blocking and still gets hit by it, you will die. They're designed to one-shot people. It's a mechanic where you have to interrupt them. Once you've kind of got the basics down of this fight, there's not really a lot to do. So you've got the fire, which you need to keep rolling out of, pulling the boss very quickly into a new position, spinning it away from the group, blocking that spin attack. If you can avoid it, if you've got the stamina, then avoid it. With the cone, you want to be stepping out of that one. You do want to make sure this boss stays as still as possible. It's quite difficult with the fire, but it's good to try and keep it very still so that your group can position their damage and AoEs. For me personally, I tend to use like this corner along with the backside. If you stand on the steps, it can be a little bit of a problem sometimes in certain damage phases. There's certain attacks that don't hit the boss properly if you are stood on those little stairs, so it's good to stand in front of the stairs, but not necessarily on them. I did notice that there was some problems with the incoming damage and the way that things worked when stood on the different elevated levels. We've already explained all the mechanics, it's fairly rinse and repeat. You do have to be careful of getting hit by attacks from the Wamasu. The off tank ideally wants to point that away, but it can hit you sometimes. It's not going to be completely deadly unless you've got a lot of stacks of hemorrhage. Let's say you just blocked every single attack the boss does and you stood inside the fire and then you've got the cone. All that overlapping damage is going to be very problematic. The hemorrhage is not really that tricky in non-hard mode. A healer will ideally want to be making sure they've got some heals over your character, but it is quite simple to deal with in non-hard mode. When you go onto hard mode, you will get like double the amount of damage as an 8k tick, so having 3 or 4 stacks of hemorrhage can be very deadly when it goes into hard mode. But there's a lot of things you can just block for non-hard mode. The most difficult part is if you're getting hit by lots of different attacks after you've received the heavy attack. So when you block the heavy attack and your health bar gets taken away and you get the debuff where you need to be healed up to full, that's the most problematic part of this fight, because then if you're also taking additional sources of damage and you haven't been healed to full, there's a good chance you can be killed. When you start getting closer to the execute phase, the boss will start to spawn a lot more fire AoEs on the ground, which means you do have to move a lot more frequently, which does make it a little bit more difficult for you to kill the boss. So that can be a little problem towards the execute phase when you've pushed it far enough. Just really try to time your dodge roll with other mechanics as well. Like I said, there is a lot of things that overlap. The boss will throw the fire AoEs in the air and then channel another mechanic straight after. So it is possible to do two things. The chain mechanic doesn't really do a lot to the tank, so when he does pin you down with it, you just break free. You don't want to get pulled in and then hit by an unblocked attack or anything during that phase, so it is easier just to break free, not take the attack if you can help it. As you can see from the video, the off-tank died because the archers weren't interrupted, so I did have to take the Wamasu. It's not really too much of a problem short term, you just kind of need to grab that. It did obviously decide to run to me through the group doing the cone, which was a bit of a problem. But if the off-tank does die, just take everything and avoid the same mechanics as you were before, but just start blocking the Wamasu's cone. And that is pretty much all the mechanics for this boss. As we move on to these next ads now, we start to see some different ads. We get Void Masters. These will spawn big Void AoEs on the ground, and they also summon hounds that charge at group members and explode, so they need to be killed. We've also got Griffins that just need turning away from the group. They do kind of normal Griffin attacks with a big cone AoE. So these Void Masters have to be killed really, really quickly, and then the Griffins are the low priority here. You just want to stack and burn everything pretty much at this phase, and just try to make sure those Void Masters die as fast as possible. Again, we get another mini boss that spawns. Again, it's in kind of an archway or a doorway. Same mechanics as before. It's the exact same mini boss as we've already previously seen. So it'll do the pull-in, it will do the AoEs, the heavy attack and the cone. So it's exactly the same mechanics. On the next ad pull, we're going to see a new ad again. Another one with a flag on its back. And these ones are very, very important. These are disruptors. And these ones are going to empower other ads and enrage them. They're going to cause a lot of damage. The easiest way to deal with the disruptors is for the off-tank to pull them out of the group. They have like an orange AoE around them, which means they're enraging everything that's inside of it. So it is much safer for the off-tank to pull them white and the main tank to take everything else. So we've got Griffins, a Void Master again, so the group should focus and stack on the Void Master and the Griffin should be pulled in. If there is literally any other ad with the disruptor, then the off-tank is likely to die. It's very, very difficult to take more than just the disruptor because the amount of damage that you'll receive is extremely high. Once everything else is dead, the disruptor can safely be killed over at the side. It doesn't really do a lot when it's by itself. Again, another disruptor Void Master here. So we pull everything again. We get the Void Master and the Griffins pulled in. The disruptor gets pulled away from the group. The very next ad pull after this one is where it gets a little bit tricky and we get two disruptors. And in that situation, it is kind of tricky for the off tank to take both of them. So it's actually easier for the main tank to take both disruptors and focus one of them really, really heavily. So if you put a target marker on the head of one of the disruptors, you want to be saving your ultimates through these ad pulls for this next one with the two disruptors, because it's going to be very tricky. You need to really burn them to make sure that they're not going to kill people. And they will if you don't kill them fast enough. So prior to that, the Paranoxia obviously comes in. Just try and take that before the next ad pull, or else it makes it much more difficult. Spin that around. Obviously this ad wanders around so it can appear at kind of any phase in this vicinity. Ideally here, because one disruptor is by the base and the other one's walked away, this is the perfect time to actually focus on the one near the base and put a target marker on it, focus it, because you've got a few seconds where you can go full damage while the other one isn't yet pulled in. The off-tank takes the Griffins and Void Masters away, and the group just really go to town on this single disruptor to make sure that it's dead, and then it's not going to empower the other disruptor. Obviously, if you take too long to kill it, it is going to empower it, and then you will start to have some troubles. We just managed to kill them fast enough here before they did too much harm to the group. But they are empowering each other at that point where we did see a couple of deaths. Once that one's dead, it's much easier to kill the second because they do kind of stop each other from taking damage. They do empower each other and buff each other up. So it is very deadly to have two of them at the same time. But obviously if you go full focus onto one of them and make sure you've got ultimate saved, it's not too much of an issue. Once that's dead, you go to the ads that are stacked on the stairs on the opposite side by the off-tank, and just watch out for the ads, the hounds that are going to be charging in at your group, because those are going to be still spawning and charging at group members during this ad pull. Alternatively, you could obviously bring these three ads along with one of the disruptors while running one of the other disruptors away, but it seems easier to just do it the way that we showed here. On the next ad pull again, we get a disruptor, we've got a Void Master, so again, easier for the off-tank to pull the disruptor away and stack everything else up on top of the Void Master. Kill that fast before people start getting blown up by the hounds that are summoned. Try to avoid the big void AoEs. You can run out of space here, and also a mini boss can spawn at the top of the stairs in front of the door, so it can be a little tricky if you are very unlucky and get a mini boss mixed in with this ad pull. This is the last ad pull before the second boss, and once that's dead, we can start looking at boss number 2. For this fight, the most difficult part really of this is phase 1. So phase 1, you will fight the first boss here, and it's going to make lightning chase certain people. So if you've got a red icon above your head, one of these lightning AoEs is going to chase after you. You kind of want to try and closely circle around it if it gets onto you, and step out of any AoEs. You can afford to stand in it for a couple of seconds, but it will start to ramp up in damage the longer you stand in it. But it is pretty much just a burn where you just burn the boss. You group stack and burn the boss and just kite the lightning away. Once this boss dies, you get assigned a portal. So you've got the Griffin portal, you've got the Lion, and you've got the Wamasu. You can see by the flags at the side which one it is. When you walk into the portal, you just taunt the ad in there as a tank, and you just hold it away so your group can focus on doing the puzzle. Now the puzzle in these rooms, the way that you can kind of see what the puzzle is if you light attack one of the 4 red rocks around the room, that will reset the puzzle. Then you need to watch from one of the corners, and when the crystals pop up, that is the order that they need to be light attacked in. Now as a tank, this won't necessarily be your job. Your job is just to hold the ads and move them away so your group can focus on doing that. But sometimes that's not always the case. So in this situation here, we're going to do the puzzle. This is the order that they need to be light attacked, and then once the puzzle is done, you finish it and you get teleported out. This is one of the most recoverable stages, one of the most recoverable trials in the game. If your group fail at this on regular vet, you could be the only person alive as a tank, and you can still res people while taunting the ads because they don't do an insane amount of damage. You can't even finish the puzzles yourself. But it's the most difficult one is this one where you've got the chasing lightning AoE. When this one is following you around, it's a big problem for your group in this room without a tank. This is the main one where they really need to have a tank in this room, and that is really helpful if that is the case. Try and kite the lightning obviously away from your group, try and keep it in a corner. You can just closely circle around it and then just dodge or block the heavy attack. When people are getting res there, I'm trying to kite it to the other side of the room so they're not getting hit by it. Once all of the 3 rooms are completed, generally you'll go in 3 separate teams, but the second boss will come down. This is the next phase of the fight. And for this bit, the main mechanic really is it's kind of like a heavy attack kind of thing where you're going to get hit by chain lightning. Obviously it links to multiple people. From a tank, there's not really much you can do about it. You just have to block the attack. One of the main things here is you're going to get lots of different AoEs. You're going to get the lightning AoEs. When you get breath with fire, you're going to get a fire AoE after it as well. So you just want to kind of stand very close to them, overlap them, and then just keep kiting them in as small of a space without moving as possible, because you don't want to move the boss. You want to avoid moving the boss as much as possible. When you've got the chain lightning, try to make sure you're not stood inside an AoE as well, because if you're taking damage from the AoE as well as damage from the chain lightning, there is a chance that you might potentially die. But you just want to be overlapping these AoEs as close as you can. When the ads spawn into the room, the off-tank should taunt those, and your group should go full damage on the boss. You have 90 seconds to push it to skip the next portal. If you can do enough damage, you don't have to do a second portal phase. If you don't have enough damage and it takes you longer than 90 seconds to kill the boss, you will have to do a second portal. Now with the second portal, because you've got ads with little icons above their head, the one that you're stood closest to when it dies will generally be the portal that you get sent to. So you ideally want a tank to be stood next to the Wamasu as it dies for the Wamasu portal. If you don't, then obviously you're going to have damage dealers in there, and it could be quite difficult because that's the main one where a tank is most useful. This does get quite messy. Obviously the room fills up with lots and lots of AoEs. It's not really that difficult for a tank though. You are just kind of standing there, keeping up your buffs and debuffs, blocking and rotating all of your things, moving the boss out of those AoEs. As you can see, we've got all the ads in. Group members need to be stood next to the one that they want to go to. I'm stood next to the Griffin here because the other ones are dead, and I'm going to get guaranteed to get the Griffin portal. Once you're assigned your thing, you look for the Griffin head, which looks like a kind of a bird, and you walk into the portal and just taunt the ads and leave your group to do the sequence. Now the sequence for just regular vet is the same in the individual portal. So the Wamasu portal always has the same sequence, but it's different to the other two, the Lion and the Griffin. So they're all kind of different. It is the Wamasu portal that is the real pain. The easiest way to kind of see the sequence in each room as well is to stand in the corner, and then you can kind of see when the crystals pop up. The order that they pop up is the order that they need to be light attacked, and that is how you complete those sequences. The good part about this is once the portal's over, the boss jumps back in and the floor is clear, so you can reset. So obviously if you've got really low damage, it isn't a complete mess all around the floor with all those AoEs. Once this boss is done, it's on to the next ad pulls again, and we start to see summoners, and these will spawn a lot of different ads, which is going to make it quite chaotic. One of the tanks should take the Paranoxia and the Summoner, stack them on top of the Enforcer, make sure they're turned away from the group. The other tank can take the Wamasu and also stack that with the Enforcer and just burn it all down. The Wamasus do cause quite a few problems in these next few ad pulls because they're mixed in with a lot of other really difficult ads, so it can be quite difficult. As we move on to the next ad pull, we start to see disruptors again, so the disruptor needs to be pulled out of group. The other tank should take the Butcher and the Summoner, and the group should focus on killing the Summoner, then the Butcher, and finally the disruptor. Unfortunately in this case, the other tank takes the Butcher away, and that means then that the disruptor buffs up the Butcher's attacks and the off tank will die. So you don't want to pull the Butcher with the disruptor. Focus bringing in summoners and butchers together. Obviously the floor starts to get a mess with lots of fire, and the fire totem shooting fire everywhere, combined with the Butcher being empowered and enraged. If this does happen, obviously full focus should go onto the disruptor to try and kill it quickly before it buffs any other ads up. Once everything finally dies, it's on to the last ad pull. Now on the last ad pull, the quickest way to get everything taunted, because this is again the last ad pull before the last boss, and it's quite a tricky one because there's so many things to taunt. If the off tank takes the right side of the room, so there's two ads on the right including a disruptor, and then the main tank takes the left hand side, which includes 4 different ads, one of them including a Wamasu, which is going to charge through the group. It is going to be quite tricky, but the best thing to do is to just stack on the Enforcer again, make sure everything's pulled into place, bring the Voidmaster in, bring the Summoner in, stack it all up on top of the Enforcer and just focus it down. Another thing you could do is the off tank could take the disruptor with the Wamasu, because then it'll give your group a little bit of extra time to see the charge coming through to avoid it so they can step out of it, and then the main tank would take the Griffin. It just takes a little bit more difficulty to try and taunt it all. The Wamasus are a real pain because even as a main tank, when you block in, when they charge at you, they're going to knock you back. Obviously things don't always go to plan in this case. The other tank took a couple of extra ads, so they got pulled over, but I tried to hold things away. Specifically the Wamasu, I pulled that away and tried to hold that out so the group could see it charging through. Having Void Masters and Summoners held out a group isn't ideal either, because they're going to keep summoning more and more ads, which makes the room more chaotic. So it is better if you can pull things in the correct order and hold them at either ends of the room so your group knew which target to focus on first. Then we get on to the last boss. Now the last boss is not very complicated at all. There is not really many mechanics. There's a cone AoE that you just need to block. You've got a range of different light attacks. The main mechanic is when your character is kind of stunned, tipping their head back with the manic phobia. You then get teleported, and you'll be teleported in front of an ad. During this stage, it is a tank swap mechanic, a forced tank swap mechanic, and this now means you cannot stand near the main boss. So the circle around the main boss means you cannot go there, and if you get near it, you will die, and that'll stay there until the ad is killed. The best way to do this is to obviously take the ad over to the main boss for the other tank to taunt it. You can also predetermine this by having the off tank taunt the boss before it gives you the phobia, and then you switch it back and you keep the boss for the main portion of the time. During this phase of the fight, so there is a portal phase. There is like 3 portal phases on this fight. When there are damage dealers and a tank in the portal, the other tank, the main tank, will keep the main boss in the main room. During this phase of the fight, ideally, if you are kind of lower DPS, maybe a more beginner group, you don't want to keep pushing this boss. You want to kind of focus on the ads, you group focus the ads, and you just take the main boss and your group do not damage it during this phase while the portal is happening. This is because the tank is in the portal. We have a range of different things happening, so depending on which portal it is, so obviously we've got lightning AoEs, we've got that lightning cone, we've got imps and stuff in the room now. Various different types of damage depending on which portal it is. Once the portal is done, that's when you start to push the boss again. You see the group come out of the portal, and then you can start pushing damage on the boss. If somebody taunts the boss just before you get the Manic Phobia, they'll get the teleport switch instead. But here it is again. So the Manic Phobia. So during this phase, the off-tank taunts the boss. Or somebody taunts the boss before you get that, so then you can just take it back. You get teleported to the ad. You want to taunt the ad and then bring it over to whoever is the tank in the center. Whichever one it is. Do not stand in that circle, that AoE on the ground, because that's going to kill you. And that stays there, like I said, until the ad dies. During this phase now, so there's going, as you can see, there's lots of different damage appearing around the room. Just step out of it. There's no reason to be inside that. You want to push the boss hard. You want to kill the ad. And then we're going to get the next big AoE. The AoE always fills up around the room from the corner. As you can see, it's filling up from the corner there. So you want to run to the edge. And then this is now going to be the next portal phase. And you have to go around this little maze to start with. Don't get hit by the AoEs. If you get hit by a couple of them, you're probably going to die. And you just make your way through. Once you've got through the area, there'll be 3 different types of bosses. Generally, the lightning boss is the tricky one, people say. And that's the main one where you need a tank. It's always good to have a tank though, just to make it easier so your damage dealers can go full damage and kill the portal as fast as possible. Once you get to the end, you wait for your group, you press the synergy, you go through into the portal. There's just a mini boss in there, and then your group just need to kill it. It's pretty much just block and stay alive and then debuff and buff. There isn't really a huge amount of mechanics to think about with this. You just block the attacks like you would normally and just give your group as much support as you can. During this phase, the other tank will be holding the mini boss in the middle of the room. Your group should be focusing the ads. Once it dies, you want to press the button to go back through the portal and then go back to the main boss. As you can see here, I'm leaving the boss on the other tank until they get the Manic Phobia. AoE, we just kind of can block or get out of that. Manic Phobia appears on the other tank, so the boss is taunted. And then we just hold the boss still. We block any AoEs. If you, that big spreading AoE there, if you get hit by that, you do get stunned for a second, so you might want to dodge out of that. The other tank brings the ad over. You want to taunt that. As you can see, there's no AoE around the boss right now because you can stand inside it. It's only the other person. It's only the one person who has the Manic Phobia who can't stand in it. So you bring that ad in so your group can kill it with the boss. And then we can get ready for the next portal phase. When the room starts to fill up with the big AoE again, you need to get out of that. And this time it's now poison. Your group make their way around. If you're not going in the portal, you don't have to run around the maze. You might as well just stay at the entrance and then wait for the boss to come back in. Once people make it to the end of the maze and go through the portal, that's when the boss will appear. Again, the boss appears. There's like slightly different mechanics depending on which portal it is. So as you can see then, that's the green portal, the poison portal. You're going to start to see people with poison around their feet now. And there's also these little AoEs that don't seem to go away. Those little AoEs you can actually walk into while blocking. Make sure you've got like plenty of health. Make sure you're blocking. Walk into them and they just disappear. It cleans up the room for your group. So that is something you can do. You can see someone running around the back of the room there with poison. Obviously they need to move away. It is a very simple fight though from a tank perspective. You just kind of stand there and hold the boss on whether you're in the portal or not. And it's that simple. You've got the forced tank swap, and then they're just the ads that you don't need to like chain into the boss. If you were obviously trying to push damage, you'd chain them in. And you'd also need a third person with a taunt if you were really trying to push the boss as well for the Manic Phobia. Once you have done the portal 3 times and you get to the execute phase, all of the 3 different portal coloured bosses will appear now. So you've got a blue, a red, and a green. The blue one is a ranged enemy which cannot be pulled, but the green and the red can be. It's easier to split these up, so as the main tank I taunted the red and the blue and just pulled them together, pulled the red on top of the blue boss, and then the off tank took the green one a little bit further away. This was just to make sure there wasn't too much damage in a small space. Once the boss is killed, it will get a shield where it cannot be damaged anymore. It will become invulnerable. Once all 3 bosses become invulnerable, it will turn back into a single boss. And once the single boss appears again, you just finish off the fight by killing it, and it's just the same mechanics once again. So in my opinion, Sanity's Edge, it's just really not as tricky of a trial as kind of recent attempts, and I think it's very achievable for more players to complete this trial, especially on Veteran, so we should see a lot more people clearing it. I hope you found this guide useful. Let me know in the comments below how you feel about this trial, what you think about it. A big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters who help keep the content coming. Your support is very much appreciated. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.